Dear Beyond Lithium investors, welcome to Geochat number 6, where we get to sit down with our CEO, Allan, VPX, Tsang, and senior advisor and friend of the company, Graeme. And we discuss a number of important topics. Today, we will focus mainly on Beyond Lithium's 2024 plans, which we announced recently, and that was during the week of PDAC. And Alframe and myself and Lawrence were at PDAC. So why don't I start there and ask for your impressions, Al? How was your PDAC in 2024?
Yeah, well, my impressions were quite good. There were a lot of people. I think attendance was right near all-time highs again, unlike previous years. So that's always good to see. My main observations were that there were a lot of major companies, the guys with pockets full of money, and they were going around and interviewing quite a few different people at many different booths, including the Prismo, which we're associated with, and our prospectors had a booth there, and they were doing some advertising on Beyond's behalf, and that booth was quite busy and active as well. So I guess when I summarize all that, I see, after the price for commodities for lithium and lithium products have dropped so dramatically that these big guys are sort of sifting through the train wreck to, to see which pieces are still looking good and, making and considering investments in some different companies and different projects. So overall, I would rate it pretty good. I thought it was really buoyant, lots of enthusiasm in the air, and hopefully that will transfer and transmit into more buoyant markets as well, which, as we all know, are under some pretty incredible pressures in 2024. But we've had a good year, and I think we're attractive to a lot of companies for many different reasons, and PDAC seemed to ensure that that thought and belief was in fact correct.
Lawrence.
Yeah, I would say Peter was it's very good. Yeah, I go there every year, and always good to go back there to see some old friends and make some new friends. And yeah, the feeling I got similar to what Al's comment. I think not just a big company. Where I was talking to different people, I think it's the company interest in lithium from all over the world. I think the movement of EV electrifications globally, I think is still there. The demand will be there, and I think this is a more challenging time. But I see the spirit and the direction of those global companies still on track to try to find quality projects that were run by quality people. So I think this is throughout exploration company, we could go through different cycles of commodities, and I think we're going through one of them when we focus on what we do based on geology and with our experience. I think we can get over this, and we'll be ahead of the game when the market turns around.
Great, and my thoughts are similar to yours, guys. So going into PDAC with gold and silver breaking out, it made for a good conference. But as Graeme has asked me right before we got on the air, that as this trickled down into the junior markets, and it seems like the junior market is unaware that silver is above 25 and gold above 2100. But also an important point that Al made, which is last year when we were at PDAC, as it relates to lithium exploration projects, you had a lot of deal makers and Australian junior companies, even shell companies looking for lithium project. And I agree with Al, it was sort of in reverse now. There were a lot of the big players, a lot of opportunities for the big players who are cashed up. They have big market caps. They have strong balance sheets, and they were, let's put it this way, kicking tires. And so that was quite encouraging. And I think what it means for investors of Beyond Lithium. It's just the makeup of potential financiers slash partners is shifted towards the bigger guys. So maybe we leave it at that for now, and I will go into the last press release, which explains the priorities for Beyond in 2024. And in there, we announced that we're going to focus on 4 different properties. We also announced that we have dropped 15 properties, and then those that are neither drop or priority properties, we're still working with our partners and great friends at Last Resort and Bounty Gold to determine exactly what's the best course of action for those. But Lawrence, why don't I turn it over to you? I think people already knew that we were going to focus on Ear Falls and Cosgrave and Victory. It might have been a bit of a surprise to some and not to others that Wheezer Lake has made the cut as a priority project. So maybe I turn it over to you and maybe explain how we all came about, all came about, and how we all worked together to. We had a couple of offsites with the whole team to set those 2024 priorities. So how did we get to these 4 properties, and how did Wheezer Lake make the cut, Lawrence?
Right. I would say those 4 projects, Ear Falls, Victories, Cosgrave, and Visa. And I think most people here would know, for Ear Falls and Victory, we have our major spodumene discoveries last year. And so that's pretty obvious that will make the cut that we want to focus on them for in 2024. And Cosgrave Lake and another successful discovery, we made a Pluton discovery. And then with that, we systematically explored the area. We got into the point with really good elevated lithium in the wider Pematytes area as well. So I think we are very close to making another spodumene discovery over there. So we really look forward to work on those 3 projects in 2024. For Wheezer Lake, it's one of the projects we prospected later in the season in 2023. So we got the data back a little bit later than the others. And credits to Jason Jace. They spent the time there, and they successfully uncovered quite a bit of wide pematites. And then with the right mineralogy, we're getting into the barrel zones. And then with some of the sample showings elevated lithium cesium numbers that aligned with the regional trend that have spodumene discovery in our neighbors. So when we saw that, we say, okay, well, they know their trend, and they announced that they run in north-south, and those trend ran straight onto our projects. And we see that with understanding the area, there are a couple of fertile prutons with the right structure controls. I think we have another great opportunity to make another discovery in Visa. So that's why I think we decide to prioritize Visa as one of our core projects for 2024.
Thank you, Lawrence. On exploration, Graeme, I'm going to ask you, if I may, sort of a high level question, right? So investors know our the priorities, the 4 the properties that are our priorities for this year. We're also glad to report that it hasn't snowed as much as it typically does in Ontario. So it looks like the exploration will resume a little bit ahead of schedule this year. And so in the permit application that we filed for Victory and Ear Falls, Graeme, we talk about various things, right? So drilling, stripping, and trenching, and then also obviously there's still the importance of boots on the ground. So do you mind at a high level kind of explaining how you see the exploration for these projects in 2024, and hopefully we will get you on site like we did many times last year.
Yeah, Alain. Good question. It's what we've talked about before. You just go through things systematically, and I think the big thing that going into 24 is we've made the transition, learned a lot on how to deal with these things on the ground in 23, and brought up the level of exploration, especially at Ear Falls and Victory, to the point where the next step moving in here is systematically mapping and sampling our corridors and our discrete targets. So that's what I keep saying to everybody. What's got me excited is the very real chance we put ourselves in the key structural zones to make spodumene discoveries on surface here. So it's a systematic sampling and mapping. I don't think people realize how much time coming from that huge area to cover in 23, to have areas defined, in 10 square, 20 square kilometer areas to do the boots on the ground mapping and sampling and prospecting. It's really keyed in. At the same time, for anybody that's been out there, they can understand. All you have to do is go the wrong way 100 meters, and you've missed your spodumene discovery. So it's really set up now, and the early field season is great to get in there and systematically sample, map, look at trends, get the data together to refine things. Hopefully some spodumene discoveries on surface, but it's refining these targets, and I think you're going to end up with some pretty good drill targets. But right now, we don't really know where the priority targets are.
So on that, Graeme, if I may just take provide a nuance to your last statement. I think investors you have a good idea of, let's say, the existing priority areas, let's say at Air Falls, right? So it's sort of to the northeast, and they also know that we found some interesting things to the southwest. I think what you're if I hopefully I'm right to qualify that you mean that, well, we don't know which part of that property is actually going to be where the big juice is, which also reminds me of something you've said to me many times, which is, and I think it was when you were using Victory. Well, we've got one big tag and then another one, and the odds that we have found the biggest part of the system is quite low, meaning that, if you put boots on the ground, you might actually find something that you like better.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Alain. Where, again, we talk this 1% thing. It's not like covering 1% of the entire property. I mean, Ear Falls, for example, you've got 14 kilometers of strike. How much of that corridor has actually had boots on the ground? We've covered maybe a couple percent of it. So just doing the math, your odds that your first discovery is the best discovery in an unexplored corridor is basically zero. So I fully expect to find better occurrences on Ear Falls following that corridor. The beauty of Victory we've got is we have the advantage of having some OGS mapping, a historic OGS mapping. That really speeds up our targeting on these dike swarms. It gives us an idea where to go prospecting and look. So in both those cases, I fully expect better results than what we've defined so far. But we've got to that cusp of being able to define this is the corridor that's mineralized, and that's the big step in transition for us. So that's great.
Thank you, Graeme. Lawrence, back to you. Let's talk about permits. There was a lot of focus as we got into the early winter on applying for drilling permits and trenching and so on and so forth. And we successfully filed before the end of 2023. Can you explain, Lawrence, a bit of the process in order to get approved? And then there's a 30-day comment period for the public to raise their hand and have something to say. And where are we in that 30-day period, and what happens next?
Right. So for the permitting process, first of all, yeah, before the end of 2023, myself and the team, we came together and say, okay, well, which project we would like to apply for an exploration permit for diamond drilling and trenching. So we selected both Air Force and Victory. Last year we applied it for the exploration plan, which is a little bit different than the permit that we're applying for. For the exploration permit, that we are allowed to bring in like a proper diamond drill holes that has a capability to drill much deeper holes. So that's why it takes time when we look at where we potentially would drill. We would like to minimize the disturbance, and we want to minimize the environmental impact on both projects. So we carefully look at, okay, I'll make sure we're not crossing streams. We make sure we utilize most of the roads to minimize the road building and such. So we came up with a plan. We draft up the plan and submitted the permit application before the end of last year. And about end of February, I think it took the government about 2 months to organize all the data, all the file, make sure everything's clearly written, and also clear label on the maps. And then by end of February, they were able to start the 30 days review process with the Aboriginal communities and also communities in the area. So within these 30 days, we'll open for comments from the different groups. So if everything works well, then after 30 days, the government will get back the application. Then they will make a decision within the next 3 weeks after the 30 days. So that's where we are. We are, I think, in the middle of the 30 days. So we got that 30 days notice starting by the end of February. So we continue to communicate it with the ministry to get updates on those as we go through this 30 days. So I think we are still on track, but we're gonna communicate with the ministry as we get closer to the end of the month.
Thank you, Lawrence. Now, Al, let's talk about how we're going to finance this, all right, which is top of mind rightly so for our shareholders, and there are really two aspects to it, or two aspects of financing. Al, I'd like to talk about. One is the option payments. We in our press release that we issued during PDAC, we explained to our investors that let's step back here, so that the option agreement that we signed last March with Last Resort and Bounty Gold was really a series of 50 or more or less options, and each option is independent of the other. So I read on the public forums that people were worried that we needed to come up with some millions of dollars, and the news release was pretty clear that for our main projects, the option payments are 97,000, I believe, in March, and then for Victory back, more in October. So you and I always keep those kinds of things in mind and make sure we don't over dilute the company. Now, so maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, and I'll remind viewers that you were a stockbroker for 47 years, and really what we're focused on here, more than anything, is raising flow through dollars at the right time, at the right price, with the right people to finance what we're talking about. But why don't I turn it over to you, and you maybe touch upon the fact that it's a tough environment, let's face it, but you've seen those cycles before. So what keeps you up at night, if anything, Al?
Well, of course, the hard dollar component to these deals, like you're talking about option payments and those types of things, don't fall under flow through. Firstly, just to address the flow through situation, most people that buy flow throughs are more concerned in the write off than they are in the underlying asset, which is unfortunate, but it also makes it easier to raise money. And under the government schemes, et cetera, they're very attractive. So those things definitely don't keep me up at night. The hard dollar component is a different story because the markets have been treated rather poorly, especially in the battery metal space. I mean, all the metals are bad, but that one seems to be the worst. So that's where you run into potential, big dilution numbers. But there are other ways to do it too. We're talking with quite a few very significant companies because of the tremendous portfolio that Lawrence and Graeme built for us last year. We do have the opportunity to consider JVs, and in those JVs, we'd get upfront cash, which is a hard dollar component, and it's totally non-dilutive as well. So at this stage of the game, I mean, obviously you can't drive your car unless there's gas in the tank. So we need hard dollars and soft dollars. Soft dollars to me, that's not so challenging. The hard dollars are challenging, but I'd say we have lots of irons in the fire. We don't want to make a statement today and say we're doing this because if you got six other irons in the fire, maybe one will burn hotter tomorrow. So we're working actively and aggressively with all of these potential partners. And we're also talking with other dealers here and there about doing straight up private placements. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll obviously have to make those decisions and move on because we don't want to, come be Johnny come lately to the party for the field exploration this year either. So suffice it to say that the markets are very difficult, but we've seen these types of challenges before. And we're not gonna take it lying down. We'll just keep working our way through the piece until we find, in our opinion, the right way to raise the hard dollars to make the option payments and run the G&A part of the company. And we'll follow that up either at the same time or shortly thereafter with flow through financing. And by the end of the month, we'll have our budget more defined and know exactly what kind of dollars and cents we're looking for there. So yes, they're challenging times, but that's the nature of the beast. There's good days and
Yeah.
there's bad days, and you can't pick and choose them. You just have to deal with them and operate within them.
I think it's important also, Al, to remind viewers that Beyond's in a very fortunate position of not having a big G&A burn, right? We don't have an office, we don't have people on the payroll. So if, as an example, if Lawrence does work, he gets paid for it. He doesn't have a fixed salary, and so we're fairly agile and direct most of our dollar payments on the absolute um, basic things like lawyers and exchange fees and so on and so forth, and our exploration and option payments, which are, as the news release said, extremely low. And I would agree with you, Al. There are many different options we're working on now, all of them quite attractive. And maybe the final thought on that, and I'll turn it over to you too, Al, is that and we've talked about this in the past. You and I are old timers. We like tight share structures, and Beyond hasn't been overly diluted, and sort of want to keep it that way. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I would. I mean, what would be really challenging is if we had another zero on our share count. So we're looking at 37 million, which in the big picture is nothing. 370 million, looking to raise several million dollars is a real challenge. And there are companies in those types of positions, and I feel for them. It's easy to let your stock get away, and the next time you wake up, you're in the hundreds of millions. So we've been fortunate. We're operating off a really good base. Our market cap right now is almost the same as a Shell. I mean, it's almost ludicrous considering what we have, but those are the times, right? So
Yeah.
the worst case scenario for us, raising hard dollars and diluting is still not that bad because we're starting from such a small base. fortunately.
Right.
So that's a very big plus for us.
Okay, last topic, and I think it's an important one in two different ways. So there was a comment or series of comment again on public forums about a statement we made last year in the press release saying we've got, I don't know, 500 samples in the lab and we're waiting for the results of those. An investor or investors said, well, where are those results and why aren't you publishing them? And so it's important to address this in two ways. One is, I guess we can be a little bit more specific in the in the future when we make a statement like this, and also important to explain to people what we do when we get these 500 assay results back. So what we mean to say, and we'll do a better job next time when we say we got 500 samples in the lab, it's not that we're going to get a spreadsheet one day and do a press release about it. So I'll turn it over to you, Lawrence and Graeme, whoever wants to go first. What we really mean to say is we're going to get 500 samples. We're going to analyze the whole thing, and we will issue a press release that summarizes what we think those results mean. So whoever wants to go first, Graeme or Lawrence, and maybe explain what do you guys do when you get hundreds of sample results back from the lab?
Yeah, I think that that's a good question, and as Alain comment, yeah, we can put in more clarification in the future about comments like that. And when we get our essays back, I think more importantly, I think we look at the data as a whole, not just on the essays. We interpret, analyze those data with our mapping data, with what we have seen in this on surface, and I would say some of the data, I would say even in the last press release was indirectly kind of used it. For example, those 15 projects we decided to drop, I think some of the data would come into play. Basically, the data, not just how much to find to make spodumene mineralization discovery and how do we advance project. Also allow the management to decide, okay, because we haven't seen the right geochemistry, we haven't seen the right geology on those projects, and that's why we decided to drop. So those data was kind of indirectly hidden in some of those projects, and then some of the samples, for example, in the channel sample we talk about, kind of mentioned in the last press release, or even at Visa, the elevated numbers. Those are the numbers included in those 500 samples. So we could make I think 10 pages lengthy technical press release to talk about the 500 samples. But I think more importantly, we want to interpret and analyze all those 500 samples or over the 1,000 samples we collected throughout the season as a whole per project. We are basically creating almost like a unique geochem database per each project, to allow the technical team to say, okay, we see a trend, we still see the potential for follow up, or not, to say, okay, we can move on from this project. So I think that's where it comes to play with the 500 samples. We can have more talk like that to go over those things. But I think in press release to go over our decision, I think we have indirectly or subtly kind of used those data in our decision making.
Yeah, just what Lawrence says there, Alain. I mean, it's Lawrence's and everybody's job to filter the database, and we're obligated to report the highlights, but we're meant to filter that and not bury the investor with a bunch of information. I mean, I remember we've actually been kind of unusual at reporting technical results quite a bit, but I think back to Cosgrave, and it confused a lot of investors, and you guys had to spend quite a bit of time educating people. Well, I mean, Lawrence is looking at all that data and seeing trends in that, but you would have dozens of Cosgraves to try and explain. So Lawrence and you guys will provide highlights, but your job is to filter that database and selectively provide the good news to people or the important news. And the rest of it is building the database to be used internally.
And I might add that another story here. Our viewers would be well aware. I'm chairman of Prismo Metals, and last year we drilled one of our properties in Mexico, the one that's surrounded by Vizsla Silver, and I remember shareholders being anxious to get the results, and part of it is their condition to look for good results, but when we put out the last drill holes was there were some holes that didn't have mineralization, and we had to explain to them that we were testing the west side extension of the vein. So at some point you're expected to run out of mineralization, and then on the east side, which is on the east side of a fault, it was a completely different mineralized structure, and either you just issue those results and let shareholders try to figure out what they mean. But we were intrigued by what we found on the east side of the fault, and we decided to do geochemistry and all sorts of different things. And then once we had a better understanding of what these drilling results meant, then we issued the press release, and we were able to explain what we felt those results meant. So we do understand the desire on the part of investors to get drill results, but I think it's important to, as you're saying, Graeme, to let the team figure out what they mean, and to summarize them and issue the summary. So maybe I'll, in conclusion, I'll turn it over for your typical last words and conclusion of this Geochat number 6.
Thanks, Alain. Firstly, I'd like to emphasize the successes that we had in 2023. We're still understanding 2023, even though it's March 2024. But as shareholders, I think we can be comfortable that we have some very, very interesting discoveries that, with even a minor amount of optimism, should expand fairly dramatically in 2024. There are a lot of moving parts to this company. We're a small company, but we have, phenomenal amount of land. It's not like you can take 15 minutes out of your day and decide what you're going to do with it. There's just, parts all over the place, a lot of really good parts. So we don't want to make any mistakes here. We're fairly methodical. Lawrence is very methodical in the decision making, where our priorities will lie. And our geological team is, as we've demonstrated, very, very professional. They'll do things the way that they have to be done and the way they're supposed to be done. And I think we have great opportunities to deliver some phenomenal successes in 2024 through various and assorted ways and means. And as far as the financings are concerned, everybody in the market knows it's a necessary evil. Like I said earlier, you can't drive the car without gas in the tank. So we'll try to be as creative and as inventive and as kind to our share structure as possible to achieve our goals. We're working diligently. Everyone on this team is putting in maximum effort in very trying times, but one way or the other, by hook or by crook, we'll achieve our goals, and we'll put that to rest, and we'll get into the field and where everybody likes to be, where the shareholders like us to be, and we'll see what we can turn up in 24. So my optimism remains very high in spite of the difficulties that are obvious to everyone. So I wish us all the very best in 2024, and thanks for hosting the Geochat, Alain. It's been good.